Today we're recording episode 114 of the Deep Dives. Destry's going to finish talking about the Blood, Sweat, and Tears music that he's been listening to lately and history of that band. I'm going to be finishing up a study in the book of Jude. So that's going to be episode 114 today.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears. What an ominous name.
Yeah.
Especially
it doesn't call to mind music.
There's 3 songs that you probably know from Blood, Sweat, and Tears that most people know. I'm going to call out 2 of them. Let's see. You make me so very happy. I'm so glad you. That's a spot on.
I may recognize that if I heard it.
All right. Chris, you?
I know which one it is, yes.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. Chris, you? Okay. Why did I say Chris, you, Chris, you?
Yeah, we have 2 Chris's.
We've got
today.
50% of the people in here right now are named Chris. And Chris Mitchell, is it okay to say your last name? Chris Mitchell is an old friend of ours that used to come to Gun Club. And man, listen, I've said this before, Chris Mitchell, and I'll say it again. You were born. Your diaper had a holster. I'm convinced of that.
Might have. I don't really remember, but there's a chance.
I think it probably did. Chris is our local expert. Both of the Chris's in gun history. Is that fair to say? Mm-hmm. History of guns,
probably.
anything firearms, weaponry. That's right. Not just guns, weaponry. Anything to do with weapons. They brought such great content to the gun club, and we miss that. But we'd like to come back for you to come back as a guest sometime and talk to us about something specific. But anyway, he's here, sitting in with us. Let's see. Will you make me so very happy, Chris? You think you know that one?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought you were just telling Chris that because he's here today.
He does make me pretty happy most of the time. Go Down Gambling is probably not one you hear. Spinning Wheel.
Spinning Wheel, I recognize
Okay,
that.
I recognize that one too.
Chris, no. Chris, how old are you? Chris, 37. Okay, so, and Josh, you're?
I'm mid-40s.
Mid-40, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so that kind of makes sense then. You're the youngest one here. Spinning Wheel is just one of those iconic songs that most people recognize, especially if you're 50 or above or 40 or above maybe, and it's one that this band became known for. Very interesting band. Think 1970, okay?
Quick side question.
Yes.
Nothing to do with anything, just popped into my head.
Okay.
When you asked.
It's so unusual for us to do that.
Right.
Really.
Have you gotten to the point where you have to think about how old you are?
I'm 60.
Because the reason I ask is the other day, my wife and I were talking. I mentioned, being this many years. I think I said 40, 45, and she had to correct me. She's like, "You're 46." I'm like, "Oh wow, I've gotten to the point where I have to actually remember."
Okay, since you framed it that way, the other day I asked Dawn if I was 61 or 62. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure. I was born in 64, so I'm 61. Mm-hmm. And I'll be 62 in September. So yes.
Okay. That just popped into my head. That's why when you asked, I said mid-40s. I wasn't trying to conceal it, but that conversation immediately popped back up in my head. I'm like, what?
Gotcha.
What? How old am I?
I've never felt so old as when I'm with the West Florida baseball team. All these 19-year-olds in the prime of even before prime of their life.
Right.
All of them are 6'1",
they're going
6'2". Man, oh man, these guys. Good gosh, I'm looking at them going, and I don't feel that way,
Right.
whenever I'm with them, but we start talking about music or whatever, and it reminds me of that. But anyway, okay, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So last time, two episodes ago, we talked about they went on let me get my notes out here. They went on a European tour in 1970. Mm-hmm. Now, what was happening in 1970 in Yugoslavia and the Iron Curtain? The Cold War was going on, right? And this rock and roll band at the time was trending huge. They had number one hits, so they were known worldwide. United States, everybody was anti-culture. So Nixon was not a crook. Nixon was doing Watergate. When was Watergate?
72.
72. Okay, so it was prior Watergate, but it was Vietnam War. Nixon said,
Yep.
I'm going to get us out of the Vietnam War, when in fact the numbers show that he escalated the Vietnam War. According to this documentary, you guys would know more than me, but according to this documentary, so
That conflict lasted like 20 years, didn't it?
gosh knows.
Well,
Like
it was over
mid-50s to mid-70s.
between the French and then the Americans taking it over. Yeah, it was probably about 22 years, I think, around there.
So from 60, when I'm referencing the Vietnam War in this episode, I'm going to be talking about 66 to 72. Is that okay? That segment of it. And I keep saying war. You guys call it an action.
It was a
Technically,
conflict.
it was a conflict.
Yeah.
But we also said the men and women over there don't give two darns what it's called.
Right.
It was the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It was the same. Don't
From their
matter-
perspective, bullets are still flying.
That's right. That's
both
right.
directions.
That's right. So anyway, so all that was happening, and the culture was, man, so polarized. And we've seen polarization in our culture in the last 10 years. And I didn't, obviously, I was born in 64, so I don't know what it was, literally what it was like, what it felt like. But you do the studies of it. There's a lot of documentaries, a lot of things you can do to study the Vietnam War. It just seems like it was this or this. You were one or the other, man, right? And they were fervent about it. I mean, people were, you were either going to Canada, escaping getting drafted, or you were drafted. Quite frankly, some of the people that wanted to escape were drafted, and they were
Right.
over there. So the more you study it, the more you realize, oh, there are long-haired hippie people fighting in the Vietnam War. They didn't want to be there, but they had to be there. I mean, it gives me chill bumps to think about that. Can you imagine if that was you, if you didn't believe in the war, but you had no choice but to go do that? None of us in this room have had to deal with
Right.
that, have we? I don't think none of us have, right? Our uncles have, our grandfathers have. Many of my uncles and uncles have fought in many wars. My grandfather was World War II, and he was in the Korean War, I believe, interpreter. Anyway, those are real men. Can we say that? Those guys, those guys are running out over sand barriers, running next to tanks with their rifles. Those are some real friggin' men, if you ask me.
I remember signing up for the draft
You did, yeah.
when I was a teenager.
Right.
I think when I turned 18 or something
Right.
Yeah,
like
when you
that.
turned 18, you had to sign up for the draft at that time.
And for a brief moment, it was real.
Right.
Like, this means something.
Right. Sure, my name's in the hat.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, so I think we can all see how. I mean, if you have a son in the Vietnam War, and you have somebody that you met that is a draft dodger, how would that sit with you? You know what I mean? Would it,
Oh, yeah.
would
I know
you-
exactly how it would make me feel.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that times however many people were on the face of this earth, in the United States at least, that's how people were feeling. You know, so you everybody had skin in the game. Can we say it that way? Everybody
Yep.
had skin in the game, and it was all or nothing skin. So polarized. And then you have blood, sweat, and tears. You have the State Department wanting to do I'm going to call it a goodwill tour. They had Louis Armstrong, and they had ended up having blood, sweat, and tears go on this goodwill tour over to Yugoslavia. Let me get my notes out here, and I'll tell you where they went and where the problems were. So Warsaw, Poland, Romania. Romania was the worst. They went over, they played their music, and keep in mind that the kids over there, they didn't look much different. According to this documentary, the films, the pictures that I saw, those kids, they looked just like we looked over here. Long hair, just, wearing what they wanted to wear, just regular old kids, man. We have a tendency to think that people in another country, they look totally different. And there might be some facial features and stuff. But you look into the audience of this particular concert in Romania, they look just like you could be in the United States. So, but the difference is the restrictions in Romania for gatherings. Does anybody want to take any kind of guess on what type of restrictions there might be if a Romanian teenager was going to a gathering concert? What kind of things do you think the government are saying you can't do?
Well, I'm thinking of, I can't remember if it was Romania, if Romania was involved with this or not. I know Yugoslavia was, but like Yugoslavia publicly was like condemning U.S. actions in Vietnam, but the government, like under the table, was supporting U.S. actions in Vietnam. And so there's a ton of protests in Europe and in America and stuff about like anti-war protests and anti-American, very antagonistic and critical of American action in Vietnam. So I can imagine if that's the public persona, then there's probably pressure to go to these concerts, but don't act like it means anything, or don't act like you're impressed by it, or even go so far as to say like, okay, I've seen it and it's disgusting because it's American, American display of, disgusting Americanism.
Interesting. Okay.
That's what I would think.
Okay. All right. Any thoughts, Chris?
Mine is pretty much, it's probably numbers of people that could gather was one thing, unless it was specially permitted. And there were probably, I don't know. I mean, I can remember some of that because I'm about a year older than you, and I do remember the ending of the Vietnam War. I remember the day it was called.
Okay.
I can remember certain things, but I remember when the Tet Offensive came on the TV when I was little,
right,
and what was going on and all that. It's in there, but it wasn't clear.
Yeah, well, you're a kid.
Yeah, I was a kid, but
Sure.
So, but yeah, I mean, I would think numbers.
Okay.
Well, also thinking about the political divide today, because I would think there would be some similarities, because if you're like a Republican and you go to a Democratic rally, you're expected to go there and say bad things about it, and vice versa. If you're a Democrat going to a Republican rally, you're expected to say bad things about it, and which is interesting because. I've seen these videos where they do like man on the street interviews, and they'll go up to someone and say, "Hey, what do you think about this thing that Trump did, where they explain the situation, whatever." And the person is just by default, I think it's racist, I think it's wrong, I think it's da-da-da. Well, what if I told you that was actually, Bernie Sanders who said that, or whatever?
I've seen those.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think more than the actual issue that's at stake, it's there has to be a negative response to this individual or this country or whatever, because that's what's expected of you.
That's right.
And probably the same thing that happened here. Blood, Sweat, and Tears is coming to town. This is American. This is an American
imperialism.
An American group. We're going to go and we're going to show how bad it is.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what the reality was. Interesting points. The reality is this, and I'll say it. These are my words. The concert goers could not do anything that could, quote, incite a riot. Standing, over exuberance. You could sit in your seat and you could clap. That's what you could do. That's pretty much it. And how did they enforce that? Well, they had the militia circling on the outside and on the inside with German shepherds. And at the end of the concert, they used those German shepherds to disperse the crowd. Now, think about that for a minute. Think about what that means, that the government instituted the government, the militia, whoever, to sit there and to, okay, so no encore. Go ahead, puppy.
Release
Take everybody
the
out. Release the dogs. That's exactly what happened. It traumatized Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Think about it, man.
Yeah.
They're on stage and they're backstage and people are clapping and wanting to do a encore, and they're looking out and they're seeing the freaking dogs biting these people. Unbelievable. So think about that for a minute. All right, that was Romania. That was pretty much. They went to other little small countries, but Romania. That was Romania. The night or 2 nights after that, I went to Warsaw, Poland, and it was totally different. People were standing. Still not. There was no mosh pits. So there's nothing like that. People were still sitting, very civilized, but they were able to stand and clap. And they said that it felt like it was in the United States, relatively speaking. Right? They still saw the military presence on the outside. They were still prepared because they knew what happened in Romania. So they had a whole bunch of military people waiting for something to happen, but it never did. It never did. One of the guys in Romania, one of the concert goers, made his way down to behind the stage. It wasn't like it is now. The stage, behind stage, was just like a curtain, so it wasn't any big barrier to get back. Well, he snuck back there. The military found him and brought him into it. This is the testimony of one of the band members. The militia got him, brought him into a room, beat the crap out of him, said, "Now you can have your autograph." He said, the guy said, the Blood, Sweat, and Tears guy said, "No, I don't have PTSD. I don't wake up thinking about it, but I think about it every day." What he saw, he literally saw that happened.
Wait, someone wanted an autograph from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and that guy got beat up?
That guy got beat up.
Gotcha.
The guy, the concert goer, the guy who wanted autograph. That's the kind of environment they're in. So after that, after the another concert in one of the countries, the military there, I think it was 2 nights. The military said, whoever said, you can play again, but we don't want to see any of the guys with long hair. They have to stay off stage. The musicians, okay, we can see them, but any of the technicians, we don't want as many long-haired people up there as we had before. The way that you play the gong, you can play it, but you can't throw it on the ground. Okay. We want you to play more jazz music and less rock and roll music. This was a band that had horns and things, very jazzy. Why? Inciting a riot. They'd noticed the night before that every time this happened, the audience got excited. Every time this happened, the audience got excited. So they made notes and they said, okay, you can do this, you just can't do it. Boy, aren't you glad you live in the United States? This is how tightly in Romania and around the Iron Curtain things are run.
Yeah.
We could never sit in here and do a podcast somewhere like that.
Right.
I mean, this was in the 70s. I don't know what it's like now. We don't have an Iron Curtain. I don't know what it's like now, but this is all leading up to something that I'm going to talk about whenever the Blood, Sweat, and Tears came back to the United States.
So an interesting thing about that, and this is a totally nerd rabbit trail. I was recently designing a structure that was meant to hold bleachers in a entertainment venue. And, so when you're designing the structure, you go to the building code, it tells you what loads to design it for, like the loads to apply to it. And there were 3 loads. So there's one that's like just the weight of everything sitting on it. But there was a forward swaying load and a sideways swaying load.
They figuring people are going to be jumping up and down, are they?
Yes, and it was different because I'm visualizing this. The forward swaying load was I think that's the one that was higher because I'm thinking like forward swing. That's like the hard music,
Okay,
right? But the soft music is the swaying back and
Oh,
forth.
that's funny.
So it's like a percentage of the weight goes forward, a percentage of the weight goes sideways. I thought that was it. Like
gosh,
in
that's
America,
funny.
we design around the expectation that people are going to be enjoying
Right.
and reacting
That's
to
funny.
the music.
That's funny. I tell you what, I hope they have that. I hope somebody engineered it that way in Virginia Tech. Have you never seen the intro of a football? Oh my gosh. Wow. With Metallica. Na, 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 na. Every student is jumping up and down.
Yep.
Yes, I bet that thing is, I mean, it's got to be.
Yes.
It's got to be jumping up and down at least 6 inches.
One of my favorite nerdy things to do, are the sensors on our phones are really, really like sensitive, and you can get an app. I have one on my phone that spits out the data from the accelerometer in your phone. It's X,
Okay.
Y, and Z, and so like when I'm on an airplane, I'll put that in front of me, and it'll show me like how like the acceleration of taking off and all this kind of stuff. And it's just me being a nerd. But you can also put it on the table next to you, and while you're typing, you can see that vibration.
You just
going
can't
through.
get enough, can you?
Right.
You can't get enough engineering
And
stuff.
I'll put it on the floor when I'm doing structural inspections and measuring like the vibration of the floor. And I'll put it in different areas just so like here's where a hard spot is, here's where a soft spot
I
is.
gotcha.
There's probably a column or a footing underneath this, probably not under here.
Good gracious.
But doing that on a set of bleachers is kind of frightening. If you've
because
ever
of
done-
how much it
yes,
moves? Oh.
because we don't really sense it that much because our bodies are kind of responding to the frequency of the music.
Right.
But these don't care.
Oh,
And when you set that on the bleacher next to you, and you start looking at the data that's coming out of that thing, you're like, holy cow, maybe I don't want to be here.
Never seen these numbers before.
right. Because the whole thing is deflecting. In real time. We just don't really notice it that
Gracious.
much. Yeah.
I don't want to have that thing going on top of a building either, because those are swaying, aren't they? The
Yes.
skyscraper.
Next time we're on the lighthouse, I'll show it to you.
Oh my gosh! I don't know if I can ever get up there again, man. Wow. All right, so Blood, Sweat, and Tears. They experienced this thing as a goodwill tour to let other countries know, yes, we have this this war going on, but we're good people. Music. We talked about how music is the universal language. So, Blood, Sweat, and Tears comes back in 1970, gets off the airplane at L.A. airport, and they didn't know it, according to this documentary, but there was a press conference, and all these, it's in just a little room, just like you'd expect a press conference to look like, and 15, 20 reporters, they start asking them questions. How was it? Did you learn anything? Was your expectations met? Anything that you saw that you didn't expect? The basic part of it, the basic takeaway was the band members that were interviewed said, we didn't, how did they say it? They wanted to know if the propaganda that they were hearing was true about those countries. And one of them said, it's more true than I thought it would, be. Now, keep in mind, these guys are anti-government. You know what I mean? They're not on the government side. They're not Nixon fans. So they really didn't have a side, but the whole culture of music back then was anti-culture, right? It was just like
It's
that.
anti-establishment.
Anti-establishment. It was anti-establishment. And Blood, Sweat, and Tears said, there's only one guy in Blood, Sweat, and Tears that are really political. He didn't want to go, but he went because everybody else wanted to. Everybody else was neutral. The lead singer is from Canada, and he was very Canadian. I don't care. I just want to play music. That's all he wanted to do. From that conference, everything changed. For that interview, everything changed for Blood, Sweat, and Tears because a guy named Abby Hoffman, he was a cultural leader or a social leader. I think he called himself a social leader. And most people, most all the hippies, looked at him that way. Wherever there was something that they didn't see justice in, he went and got people together and protested. He was the one that did all this stuff. Just from that half-hour conference of saying, they also said, back up for a second, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, one of the guys also said, we're glad to be back in the United States. We're glad, there are other countries that just, they're just not as good as these United States. Whatever, using my words.
Which is an interesting concept, especially if you're known for being like anti-establishment, because nobody. It was popular to have the title of anti-establishment, but it wasn't nearly as popular to point out exactly what that establishment meant.
Well,
was it because a lot of people are like, anti-America, even today, anti-America, anti, a lot of things that have to do with Western culture, while at the same time enjoying the actual freedoms and things that they would like people to believe that they're against. Like maybe anti-Trump or anti-Biden or anti-whatever, and yet enjoying the freedoms to be anti that. And so it's always interesting to me, like in the case with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, being anti quote-unquote establishment and going to another country, seeing the establishment there, coming back here and saying, well, I'm still anti-establishment, but I like being back here in the Americas.
So you're definitely approaching the problem that they had whenever they came back. Now, I want to say, hearing you say it also, I want to maybe back off on a little bit of saying Blood, Sweat, and Tears were anti-establishment. They were chosen as anti-establishment. They didn't come out and said, they've never come out and said, we are anti-anything. Just them being a band at that time.
Right. It's assumed.
It's assumed, exactly.
Right.
It's assumed.
Just like if you're an actor associated with Hollywood,
That's
it's
right.
assumed that you
That's exactly right.
lean a certain direction
Yeah, they were
politically.
chosen to do that. So think about that. Think about this right, and I'll just call it the right and left. They've come back. They're doing this conference. Abby Hoffman gets word of it. Here's what the conference was about. He starts picketing the band. Now, why would he do that? What they found out is that Abby Hoffman was saying, Blood, Sweat, and Tears are guilty of treason. They went to Eastern Europe, or them going to Eastern Europe will not be forgiven. And he just laid into them because they were sponsored by the State Department. So I'm going to back up a minute, and I'm going to tell you that
Blood, Sweat, and Tears was sponsored by
yes,
this.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears were sponsored by the State Department to go to Eastern Europe and do everything we've been talking about. What we found out was that they were kind of, it was a little gray in the documentary, so I'm hesitant to say it, so I'm going to ask people to do their own research on this. They were given, Blood, Sweat, and Tears was given to, or brought up to the State Department by their manager as being a potential candidate to do this tour in Eastern Europe because the lead singer, who was from Canada, was at risk of losing his green card because of some trouble that he had as a teenager. Finally caught up to him, whatever, and the State Department was saying, we're going to have to send you back to Canada. This is whenever Blood, Sweat, and Tears was right. I guess he got on the radar and they did whatever research and they said, no, you're going to have to go back. Unbeknownst to the band members, the manager said, I'll take care of this. He went to somebody he knew in the State Department and said, if you grant him his visa or grant him his green card, they'll do the tour.
Yeah.
Band members didn't know that.
Right.
Band members were presented, hey, let's do this. It would be a good idea to do that. Oh, okay, yeah, we'll do it. So they were pretty much blackmail. That's blackmail, is it not?
Yeah.
That's exactly
It was a deceptive coercion.
a deceptive coercion is exactly what it was. So
Either that or is a problem that the manager needed to solve.
Well, that's the way he saw it.
Yeah.
It was a problem that he solved.
We need to find a way to get your documents renewed. What if we present ourselves favorably to the State Department so they see a benefit to having us? And, oh, by the way, if you do want to have them do this, we need to take care of this problem. So they're more likely to address it.
I think both of y'all are right on target. Mm-hmm. Hence the problem Blood, Sweat, and Tears has.
Right. And Blood, Sweat, and Tears are kind of caught in the middle of that because
Absolutely
they don't
they
really
are.
want to do this. But now this has been brought to their attention that if you want to stay together as a band, this is a problem that needs to be addressed. Here's the only way it can be addressed. So, from their perspective, it's probably blackmail.
And if you think about it, he really didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. He would, like you just said,
They were drafted.
He was drafted. They were drafted, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears didn't know the negative consequences that they were going to suffer when they came back. So it's not like they knew ahead of time, we're going to do this, and we come back, we're going to have negative consequences. It could have very well been they went, lead singer got the green card, came back, everything's fine. Mm-hmm. Didn't turn out that way. He came back, I.B. Hoffman got on to him and said the state influenced. Again, remember the time, nothing to do with the state. We didn't have anything. We don't want to have anything to do with them. So they suffered that that consequence because, in my opinion, from what I could see from Abby Hoffman.
I wonder if they came back and were critical of the United States, if their popularity would have
I don't know.
stayed the same. Because I think about Jane Fonda, right?
Yeah.
She went over there,
Yeah.
Hanoi Jane.
It probably would have been the same, but the way that this documentary presented it is they literally step off the plane, go into the airport, having a press conference. Now, I can only think that the State Department did that. If they're sponsoring it, right, they have to, you're still on our dollar, you're still doing this, so go in here, you're doing a press conference. After press conference, you're good. Our contract is over. Mm-hmm. That press conference is what did them in.
Yeah.
So if they would have come back and said but how can you
Either anti-America or pro the other place.
How can you be anti-America whenever they just sponsored your tour? Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? So they felt. My impression was Blood, Sweat, and Tears was just being honest. Yeah, and they didn't have the political view in their minds whenever they're talking.
You can be critical of America by not saying a word as long as you speak well of the place you just visited.
So you're getting off a plane, however long the flight was, whatever you did on the plane as a music, whatever. And they're getting off, they're sitting with cameras. They're probably not at their best.
No.
You know what I mean? They didn't have the time to think about it, whatever. They just, it just amazes me.
They probably weren't prepped for it at all.
They probably weren't prepped at all.
The questions are going to be asked. Here's how you're going to answer it.
They were, they were given to the wolves.
Yeah.
And they, after later on, whenever they were interviewing, this was 20 years later or whatever, they said, Blood, Sweat, and Tears said in that interview that they felt like they were being targeted. Mm-hmm. They walked out of there going, that felt hostile. The questions felt hostile.
Right.
And they didn't know why. And they went on about their business. And then they started hearing, no social media. It was all other ways of getting word of mouth and all this other stuff. They started hearing that Abby Hoffman was doing all this stuff. Why are you doing that to us? Well, they saw their popularity just go down and down and down from that experience.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think, man, they were just used. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They were just guys who wanted to play rock and roll. They thought it was a good idea. Whenever they were recruited to go over there, they were still thinking they had a choice to go over, which they really didn't have a choice. I think what was going to happen, the manager was going to say, if they decided not to go, he would have said, well, now I've got to tell them we don't have a choice. But he didn't get to that point. They didn't find that out until later.
Yeah.
So they're just a victim of circumstance, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. I could go into more detail about everything that happened, but I would suggest that people watch Blood, Sweat, and Tears. What the ever happened to them is what the name of the documentary is.
How do you spell
Hell?
Okay.
That's exactly how you spell it. I love documentaries like this just because it gets behind the scenes, and I love '60s music. The music was so good. They were the first band before Chicago to implement horns into their rock and roll. There were horns before, but this was the first band that actually had 9 members, 2 trumpets, trombone, keyboardist, drummer, singer, and they sounded different than anybody else. And that's what trended them high. They went to number 1 several times. They came back, and then they never went to number 1 again. I don't know exactly what happened, how they fizzled out, but it just never happened for them after that. So anyway, that's Blood, Sweat, and Tears 1 and 2. The first episode was not the last one, but it would have been 112. 13, 112. So watch 112, and then watch this if you want to get both of the episodes. Any questions? Anyone?
I'm always curious, when people are honest with themselves, when there's like this outward expectation for them to lean a certain way politically or to be critical of one person or another, and there's some conflict internally that they know the outward perception is wrong. Because this, for example, right? They're in an environment where they're expected to be critical of Western culture.
Right.
And yet...
During the press conference you're talking about? Or just
this whole
general?
experience,
Okay.
right? Mm-hmm. Probably, culminating in the experience at the press conference, but they come back and, like, in a way they had their eyes open. Like, this is what it's really like in other countries.
Very much did, yes.
And so, like, you leave with this attitude of, I'm critical of the place where of the system where I live, but then you experience the system in another country, and you're like, oh, actually, the system where I live it seems to be superior to the system I'm experiencing now.
Yep.
And then going back to that, still being expected to be critical of the system by other people who didn't experience the same thing you did.
Yes.
And you have to come back and be like, how do I navigate this contradiction? Mm-hmm. Because I'm still expected to be critical of this system.
Right.
And I now see that there's a tremendous inherent benefit to this system. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you reconcile that and be honest with yourself and with other people without without the consequence of being hated by everybody now?
Boy, you just summarized both episodes. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what happened. And in retrospect, I think all the band members will say, Josh, you're 100% right. Mm-hmm. We never thought of it that way. We just are musicians who wanted to play our music. Yeah. We were assigned these titles. We were assigned being represented by, the people that were anti-establishment. Mm-hmm. What a bad place to be. I mean, and plus they were hijacked on the green card thing. Right. So we didn't have and that's another thing too. They didn't have nowhere to go.
That's another thing too. The people that were hijacking them,
State Department,
that were taking advantage of them, like they got to their position, taking advantage of the freedoms they have in this system, mm-hmm. and yet they use those freedoms to blackmail these people and turn it into an endeavor of their own gain.
Yeah.
And I think that attitude and those kinds of efforts is what gives the system the bad reputation in the first place. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, think about it in churches, right? There's obviously a moral and a good component or a good characteristic of churches in general. But how many of us have been in churches where we've had a bad experience with people in the church or a person in the church or a program in the church or whatever, and then all of a sudden that like sours the idea of church in our mind, like just church in general. How many people
I have
don't
no
go
idea
to,
what he's talking about, Chris. Do you?
how many people
have
don't go to
no-
church anymore because they've had a bad experience?
That's right, because of a person,
Right,
or
but-
a people group or whatever.
And if those people were, I don't know, this ties in with what we've been talking about in Jude too, because Jude was all about, there's people in the church who have corrupted the
Yes.
message of what, ultimately the message that Christ is bringing.
Mm-hmm.
They've corrupted it mainly for personal gain, and it's not just that it gives the gospel a bad name, it gives Christ a bad name, but it's dangerous, and it's something that God will be very adamant about judging and the consequences that come about from it. I don't know. I just see a lot of parallels in the blood, sweat, and tears thing, everything they experienced, and what we've been talking about in Jude.
Well, we're fooling ourselves if we don't think that that's still happening. That type of thing's happening. Favors are doing
100%,
favors.
yeah.
Even in local government,
Even in
favors are being
churches.
done in
That's
churches.
an active
favors are
problem
being
in
done.
churches. That's
Sure.
what Jude was talking about.
Right.
It's like, this is an old problem. It's a current problem. People going back as far as Enoch talked about this, but the apostles just recently have reminded us about this. I'm talking to you about this. This is a problem that's going to happen all throughout the history, all throughout the future of the
Right.
church. And that's what we're talking about today as we see this happening. And Jude, keeps saying, like, build yourself up in the love of God, constantly build your faith, contend for the faith, all this stuff, so that you can combat that type of thing that's happening,
Right.
that kind of corruption that's happening in the church.
Right.
And I think another thing that's interesting about Jude, when you go back through a lot of the other epistles in the New Testament, the way they end is there's a contrast between the way they end and the way Jude ends, because a lot of these other epistles, it's always like grace be to you, peace be to you, all this stuff. And Jude's like, no, let's turn the attention back to God. Where if we're addressing something that's critical about the system, how the system is being corrupted, we have to remind ourselves why the system exists in the first place. In Jude, he says, he turns his attention back to God and says, to him be glory and honor and dominion forever. That's where our focus should be. And I think in the case of blood, sweat, and tears, the focus seems to be like they experienced a lack of freedom in other countries, and they came back appreciative of the freedoms we have here. And that's kind of what they were focusing on. Like, it's not about you, it's not about you, it's not about us, it's about the freedoms that we all have.
Yeah.
Those freedoms need to be upheld
Right.
and recognized.
Right. It was an interesting study. Interesting study. I'm interested to look at some more documentaries like that. I think give us some ideas of what you want us to look at as far as the music goes and the Bible goes. Is there something about other? Do you want to close with other Jude stuff?
No, that was pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it fit really well.
Good.
One thing that we're going to be doing in the future is we've been talking a lot about music and different bands and stuff. Something we're sort of planning on in the future is going back to like old television shows and movies that were influential in our culture,
Okay,
and looking at
gotcha.
those too.
One thing I noticed since you mentioned the music in any kind of show, from a sitcom to a movie, how the music sets the tone of what you're seeing. Some of the shows actually start the music before the scene, so you get kind of in a if you're in a very excited mode here, even before the calm mode, they'll start playing the calm music at the end of the exciting scene, and then transition into the calm. I've never noticed that before.
We were just talking about that when it comes to worship.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
In
right. A
churches.
very intentional arc.
You start with the high energy songs,
Yep.
and you level off and taper down to the calm stuff as you
Right.
go into the sermon. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. All right. Gosh, guys. Great. Anything, Chris, you want to add anything to this fascinating discussion that we had?
Actually, one time I'm going to say something.
Okay.
I think when you go back to the 60s
Yep.
and you look at the anti-establishment, all that, the biggest difference between today and then, yeah, there's propaganda, there's ignorance, but we have a lot more ignorance now within the society when, in general, I mean, you see some of these people that ask questions to, I think that people back in the 60s would have, what's a quarter hour, or, like 25 minutes after they start seeing. I mean, one of the latest ones, and this is going to throw it out there. Somebody asked, says, well, why are they focusing on the Straits of Hormuz and ignoring the gays of Hormuz? That is an actual,
Right.
and then this person actually comes on and goes, oh, well, it's because they're being discriminated against. They have no concept that that's a body of water, has nothing to do with the person. I mean,
I saw this meme the other day. It said, I used to think that the problem with humanity is not enough access to information, but now we have access to all of human history on our phones. That
And
wasn't
there's
the problem.
still-
That
it
wasn't the problem.
Too much.
I mean, there is a basis of ignorance within our society,
Yeah.
and education has declined over the past few years.
The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation is the philosophy of the government in the next. I think Abraham
Exactly,
Lincoln said that.
and it's a very scary situation we have to live in. I mean, I look at some people and go, how do you even get out of bed in the morning
How do
and
you
tie
put one
your
foot in front of
shoes? It's
an accomplishment.
And I have to deal with you in a civil manner, and that's hard for me.
That's
And I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean, it's hard for me because I'm not stupid, but I know I'm a lot smarter than some of these people that are out there talking. It's like,
Sometime we're going to have to talk about just education in general.
yeah.
Oh, you could have a teacher come on. I'd like to. I talked to a teacher the other night about how AI is affecting her, and it was a very short conversation, but it's one I'm going to continue. It's a booster on West Florida.
Yep.
Baseball, but she said it's definitely affecting us right now. But there are implementing rules and regulations on how to do it, how to deal with it, giving students access to certain things and not access to other ones. Anyway, so
Yeah, I've been teaching at the college level for about 17 years, and I've even seen trends.
it's happening. It certainly is happening.
I can tell you too, I've seen
Chris Mitchell.
I've seen a couple of things that have been put out by different agencies and stuff. You actually start to have a decline in the student performance scores, things of that nature.
Right.
The more electronics you add, so the more computers, tablets, Chromebooks you add,
Right.
all your scores, your testing levels, everything go down. It does not go up. It does not help. It's
Right.
actually making the scores and everything go down.
Yeah.
I have two young kids. I've got
Not as young as they used to be, but they're still young.
they're still young, yeah. I've got one that's about to graduate, one that's graduated now.
Gosh,
and
that's crazy,
I've
Chris.
got the two that are elementary, and I can
Wow.
tell you that
Chris started having kids when he was 4, by the way.
about the time I became legal, I started having kids. So yeah. So it's one of those things, and you see it in the way they're teaching, and the things they're teaching are not anywhere near what I learned. So I know it's
Okay.
nowhere near what anybody else in this room
Gotcha.
learned or went through. And it's changed even the two older ones. Me sitting there trying to help, and I know history very well. Me sitting there trying to help, and then it's like, okay, no, this is it, this is it, this is it. And I can go find in old textbooks, and I can back up what my answers
Okay.
are. And it's getting marked wrong. That's
Wow.
like, no, that's...
Wow.
Oh, no,
that
this is what they
right?
teach now. It's like,
Revisionist.
when did it
history.
change?
Huh, gotcha. Right.
Yep.
One of my things is, eventually, I've said this before, is when are they going to say the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in retaliation for us nuking them first? You said he's joking. No, I'm not joking. Because 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, that could happen. Because if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going.
Right.
So watch the documentary, read 1984, and
We'll discuss.
Animal Farm and Brave New World.
Like it. I like it. All right. Chris Mitchell, thanks for being here, man. You're welcome anytime as far as I'm concerned. You have to okay it through these guys, but as far as I'm concerned, man, you can come anytime you want. Come anytime you want to.
You just gotta watch out if me and Chris get together.
I know it, right? Y'all could do a podcast yourself.
In the brain going over here, taking over the world.
All right, guys, we love you. Thank you for being with us. Donna, I love you. I'll see you soon. See y'all next time for episode 115.